So then after the Panch Kedars, the next destination after the 4 Kedars, the next destination of course was Kedarnath, which is the most important of the Kedars. So we passed through Mad Maheshwar, took a cross country route as usual, as Babaji was accustomed to, and arrived, entered the road to Kedarnath through Gupta Kashi. Gupta Kashi, there is a small temple of Kashi Vishwanath which is hidden away, so it is called Gupta Kashi, hidden Kashi. And then from there we took 3 days walking through the villages to reach Kedarnath. As soon as we entered Kedarnath, now this going to Kedarnath is something very, very fascinating, because you keep walking. Once you reach Gaurikund, Gaurikund is the last stop for buses and vehicles. From Gaurikund you have to walk for 14 kilometers even today. If you can't walk, you might go on a khachar, which is a mare, or carried by these Nepalese boys on a basket or on a dholi. But the best thing is to walk. If you are healthy, then it is best to walk. So from Gaurikund, 14 kilometer walk. Those days when I was young and was walking with Babaji, it started from Gaurikund in the morning at around 4:30, and I think by 10:30 I was in Kedarnath. Now it is not possible to do so fast. Anyway, soon as we reached Kedarnath, Babaji said first we go to the temple and do pranams and then go to the place where we reside. So he took me. Now the site of Kedarnath is so fascinating. When you walk and as you keep climbing, you don't see any snow-clad mountains except in the distance, far away. Then when you come to Rambara and take a left turn, suddenly you see before you this huge peaks full of ice shining. It is as if Shiva is standing before you in the form of a huge ice linga. It strikes everybody, because suddenly you are face to face with a mountain or a range of mountains completely covered with ice and shining like silver. So this is my first vision of Kedar. So I went with Babaji, entered Kedarnath, the town of Kedarnath, the temple of Kedarnath, which is a Shiva temple. It is right on the foot of the Kedar range, the Kedar mountains, very close, and it becomes extremely cold there, because first of all you are about 14,000 feet above sea level. Secondly, you are surrounded on all sides by ice-clad mountains, and you are so close. The temple itself is right there on the foothills of the mountains. So first we went there, and it was open. There was not much rush, so we went there. I think we were going there towards the end of the season, when it is so cold that mostly pilgrims don't come. Went there, bowed down, took a pradakshina of the temple, and then Babaji said that now we will go up to the cave and stay there. As you enter the way that goes to the temple and cross the river on the bridge, if you look towards the left side on the top, far away you will see even today a few small kutirs. 2 years ago when we went to Kedarnath, I sent some of young boys to go up, and some not so young also joined them, to go up and look at the kutirs, and they said they are still existing, and there is still a beautiful garden behind the kutirs, but you can't make out from below, you have to go up. So right up there on the left side there was a small kutir which was Babaji always lived there, he said, whenever he went to Kedarnath. He says that he has lived there with Sri Guru Babaji during the days when he himself was doing tapasya, which may be 100 years ago, I can't reckon. Anyway, So we went there to the cave, and there was an assistant of a trader, a Marwadi trader, who used to come there every year, provide blankets to the sadhus, and provide provisions to the Kali Kambliwala Dharamshala, where sadhus can stay freely and they are given food. So this Marwadi gentleman had sent an assistant who used to bring food to the cave all the way up. So when we reached there was food brought for me, so I had food, and then Babaji told me that he would stay one more day and that he was going to Gomukh, so he had to leave and I have to stay there alone. Then he told me, Sri Guru Babaji, which is our Parama Guru, does want some things to be done with my nervous system and my brain to accelerate the movement towards spiritual consciousness. So he said that you stay here for some time. After a while, 3 people will come and take you to some place where you will have to undergo certain procedures which will help you to move forward faster than you can normally. So I never said no to anything that Babaji said, so I agreed. So after Babaji left, one morning while I was meditating, 3 men entered the cave. I could not actually see their complete faces. I only know that they were wearing some kind of a cloth which came up to their knees, and they were bare-bodied up. They were very fair, almost white and pale, as if they were suffering from anemia, and on their face there was a cloth tied like the surgeons do in operation theatres, same thing that surgeons tie in operation theatres. Like the Jain sadhus, the Jains of the Svetambara sect and the Digambara sect, they tie a cloth. So they came. Babaji had given me a code word, a code sentence, which I was supposed to tell them, and they were supposed to reply to me in a particular manner. He said if they didn't, then I was not supposed to go with them. He said, in this field, in this particular path that we are taking, there is always the danger of negative forces taking over. So he said, this is the right time for negative forces to catch you. So unless and until they clear the code with you, you are not supposed to go with them. So when they came and said, mumbled, Sri Guru Babaji has asked us to take you there, I used the code. They replied exactly as Babaji told me, so I agreed to go with them. So the first thing they did was, they took a black cloth and blindfolded me, and then we went. So since they had blindfolded me, I don't know where they were taking me, but we went quite a distance. It must have taken an hour or so, and then I felt that we were descending some steps. So we got down the steps, and then I felt that we were going through a corridor, because air, hardly any air was there. It was kind of, and cold. And then they took off the blindfold. When they took off the blindfold, I found that we were somewhere in a cave. I saw the entrance from which we could have come, and there was a dhuni burning there at one end, and these 3 people asked me to lie down on a plank of wood which was kept in the middle of the room. So I lay down. Then there was a 4th man sitting there who said, breathe in and breathe out and fix your attention on the breath. So I did that for some time, and I felt very calm and quiet and settled and tranquil. Then they took a bowl from somewhere, a bowl, and inside that was some green colored liquid which I was supposed to drink. It was so bitter, but I forced myself to drink the whole thing. As soon as I had drunk that, in about half a minute, there was such terrible pain in my stomach and my neck and my body, and the body started to have almost convulsions, fits. Now, while this was going on, near my head I saw them with a small round thing, metallic looking thing, which they opened, and from there they took out two wires with some kind of contacts in it and put them inside my head. I was not unconscious, I could feel all that. One here and one somewhere here, pressed it inside, said, close your eyes. So I closed my eyes. Slowly that pain and everything went off. The body stopped the jerky movement like a fit. And then I thought I was kind of floating, the floating feeling, and that floating feeling increased and it moved towards the feet, and then with one small jerk, I suddenly found that I was looking at the room. Even though I thought the eyes were closed, I was actually looking at the room, and I saw all these people sitting around, 4 of them, that machine there, and then I was surprised to see me lying there. My body was also lying on that plank, and I realized that probably I have come out of my body and I was looking down at the whole scene. My body was lying as if it was dead, straight, pale, no movement, nothing. I wandered about a bit here and there. And then I looked at these people with the masks who were sitting around, and they looked at me. So I knew that they could see me as I could see them, and they nodded their heads. After a while I thought, aha, this is so wonderful, I don't want to go back in there. So I started moving out of the cave. From outside the cave I could see the temple, very beautiful, standing there. I said, this is wonderful, I hope that they cut the connection and I am free forever. The moment I thought about that, there was a horrible jerk, and it was like, and I felt like I was falling from a great height. I don't know if anyone has experienced this. When you are dreaming sometimes, the deep dream, deep sleep, sometimes you feel that you are falling from from height down suddenly in the dream. It was like that. So now I think it happens because every human being at night probably leaves his body and moves around in his subtle body, which is the Shushma Sharira, travels around. But I think the problem is that when you come back, the brain has not been trained to remember the experiences. So the experiences that you have, they're kind of mixed up with other thoughts and jumbled up, and this is what you think is a dream. So some people get up from the dream and say, oh, I dreamt that I was in a beautiful place. And what happened? Then I came back and everything vanished. Now, if you want to remember these experiences, the best thing to do is, as soon as you wake up in the morning, while memory is still there a little bit, take down a paper and jot down everything. Because within an hour, the whole thing will be forgotten. But yogis are trained to go consciously out of their bodies, remain out and come back when they want, and remember everything that happened during that experience. What I am trying to say is, every human being goes through this, but they don't remember enough in a proper manner to understand that this has happened. Sometimes by mistake, when they wake up suddenly, that's when you feel you are falling from a height. It's coming back to the body. Actually, the same way, I was also I also felt a very strong tug, and I was back in the system. When I woke up, I had a terrible headache. So the person sitting there put his hand on my head and massaged a little bit until I became somewhat normal. But then they said I could stand up, but when I stood up, I was feeling dizzy and about to fall. Things weren't in their proper place. The consciousness was not fixed properly. So they said, close your eyes and sit down cross-legged. Close my eyes, and then I felt a kind of a floating sensation like sitting in an aeroplane. And then when I opened my eyes, I was back in our little kutir. After that, I stayed in that kutir for at least 4 or 5 days, for 3 weeks actually, till Babaji came back from Gomukh. Now, during these 3 weeks, every night I used to lie down, close my eyes, and think of what happened the previous day, and found that I could very easily float out of my body and move around. Now, the thing is, it is not such a difficult thing. People don't do it or cannot do it, mostly because they don't believe in it first. Belief is important. If you don't believe in something, nothing will work. First, they don't believe that a Shushma Sharira or a subtle body exists. So, it rules out the capacity for most people. Now, suppose you believe, then there is fear that if I go, how will I come back? Will I be dead forever? The fact is, first fear, faith, whether it is there, you cannot do anything. You have to believe. The other, you see, like any other thing in the world, unless you believe you can do it, you cannot do it. This not only applies to this, it applies to everything on earth. If I start any career or any life or any art or any science saying, I don't think I can do it, it will not work. You have to believe, yes, it will work. And then even with repeated failures, it's going to work, because the mind has tremendous capacities which are unleashed the moment you have faith. I have discussed this with Babaji many times. I must tell you this example which Babaji told me. He said, you imagine a man walking on the street. He's a very weak looking man. If you look at him, you don't even think that he is going to walk another few feet. He's so tired, old, weak, wearing torn clothes, a beggar walking on the street. And he says, you think that any next step he might fall down and die. He said, in that condition, suppose a car or a vehicle or a bus or something comes very close to him and stops with screeching brakes and horns and all that. What will normally happen to this person? Normally, probably he would have jumped across the road, which is not possible even for a long jump champion, because he has to save his life. And his conscious mind, which says I am weak, I am powerless, I cannot do, does not exist at that time, because something else is taken charge from here, which says this body has to be saved instantly. So he is not conditioning himself by imagining that he cannot do it. Because under the present circumstances, if he imagines, I am an old man, I am a weak man, I am a sick man, he cannot do it. So for some reason, for survival of the body, which is a built-in system, suddenly the adrenal gland in the human body pumps hormones into the system, into the bloodstream, and there is a sudden action, which is a defensive action. To be free of death, he jumps. This would not have been possible if he had conditioned his mind, his conscious mind, to think, oh, I cannot do it, I am a weak man. It happens because his conscious mind is not thinking at that moment. The action comes from beyond thought. Faith is also something like that. It works outside our imagination. It's beyond our control. It comes from somewhere else. why I am saying this is one of the reasons why people are not able to come out of their heavy clay weight laden body is because they don't believe in it. If you believe in it, one, and two, if you come out, if you learn how to remember what you experience, because most often even if you do it, when you come back the brain rubs off all the memory of it. If you learn techniques or methods by which you can remember your experiences, and three, if you are guided by someone in the right technique of doing it, I am telling you the discussion I had with Babaji, not as if I am saying this, then it is possible, I think, for most human beings, there may be some exceptions, to be able to do it sometime or the other, if not always. For me, when I lived in that cave after this experience for 4 or 5 days, no, for 3 weeks before Babaji came back, I used to lie down and I worked out myself a certain way of doing it smoothly without fear. I imagined that on the top of the roof there was a big rope hanging, thick rope tied down, and I closed my eyes and I used to imagine that I am trying to catch the rope and climb up and go to the top of the roof. First the right hand, you actually have to feel the rope in your hand, right, right, left, till you are when you are nearly in your mind, imagination, touching the roof, you suddenly realize that you are looking down and there is a body lying there. Now, first time you see your body, you will be surprised because it does not look as you think it looks. We always have an image about our body, and that image is based on photographs or what we see in the mirror. But how another person is looking at you may be completely different. So, for the first time when you look at your body as if somebody else is looking at it, for a second you will wonder, oh, is this me? Take some time to actually recognize and find out. Anyway, so for the next 3 weeks in the kutir, I spent doing all these activities, trying to every night come out, float around. In fact, once I think I went very far, and there I saw on the way to Gomukh in a place for Bhojbasa, which I had never visited in my life before. Afterwards I went with Babaji and saw it. I saw Babaji sitting in one cave and meditating. I had never seen Babaji meditating before. He always kept his eyes open, but there I saw him close his eyes and meditate. It is very interesting because when your subtle body goes somewhere, nobody can see you. You can see somebody, but they cannot see you. You can hear, you can see, you can smell, but you cannot feel. I mean, if you cannot bring a watch or something from somewhere, this is not possible, because if you catch something, your fingers will go through it. You cannot, but you can smell, you can see, and you can hear. 3 things happen. So, normally the subtle body, which is called Shushma Sharira, it is also called in yogic terminology Linga Sharira. About this also in the Tirumantiram of Tirumular, it has been beautifully described about how this happens. Now, when so I saw Babaji sitting with closed eyes and meditating. I just stood there and in my subtle body did pranams, and I was standing there and wondering, he is meditating. Suddenly he opened his eyes and he said, what are you doing here? Go back. This is amazing because nobody can see you. So immediately I was tugged back and I found myself back in that body. The thing is, when you come back, you feel disgusted because It's so difficult to carry this around. It's like a dead weight actually, and that is like flying like a butterfly above on the sky. So after that, after 3 weeks, Babaji came back, and together we went to Gomukh. We go to Gomukh, we came back to Rishikesh. I think about this. But before that, I want to complete my story about Tirumular, which I stopped halfway last time. Now, so this young yogi who came in search of Agastya, he came to the south and he found these goats and sheep crying because the shepherd was lying dead. Tirumular, feeling so sad, got into the shepherd's body, leaving his body in the trunk of a hollow trunk of a tree, and got up. So the sheep were very happy. So he wandered around with the sheep for some time, grazing them. By the time some villager in the forest found a body lying under the hollow of the tree and burnt it. They thought it is a dead body, is lying there, it will get. So after 2 days that body was burnt. So Tirumular could not get back into his original body. He continued to occupy the body of the shepherd. Now in Tamil, Tirumular means the shepherd, one who looks after sheep. When he came back home, his wife saw that she could not recognize his same body. So she thought her husband has come back. But the husband, after sitting down, started spouting Tamil poetry, which is the Tirumantiram. And as she started singing the poems, she was shocked to see how can my husband sing such beautiful Tamil poems. That is the Tirumantiram that we have today. And I would suggest anyone who is interested in the spiritual field to read and understand the Tirumantiram, which is one of the most important spiritual texts, I must say, which have been written in the world. It contains everything about spiritual practice, about yoga, about Kundalini, about the chakras, about how yogis attain samadhi, what is the situation, what is the position in which they should sit when they leave their body, the entire, including Linga Sharira, Shushma Sharira, there is nothing that has not been discussed. Fortunately for us, there is a beautiful English translation of the Tirumantiram available now, I think with the Ramakrishna Mission or with the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, one of these. I have seen it. It's a very important textbook that should be read, and now the English reading public can read it. Those who know Tamil need not worry because the originals are available as it is without any interpretation whatsoever. Kedar, we walked for many days. I think we didn't go back to Gomukh. We came from Kedar, passing through the different prayags, stopping near the river and under the trees, in caves, in little ashrams. And I think in about 16 days, 20 days, we were back in Rishikesh. This time, instead of staying at Charanapaduka in Badri anyway, this time in Rishikesh, we stayed at the cave of Mauni Baba. Now the Mauni Baba's cave, as I told you earlier, is situated on the way to the Nilkant Parvat on the other side of the Ganga. Most of the ashrams are all on this side. Now if you cross the Ganga from the Shivananda ashram side, keep walking along the sides of the Ganga on the other side, as you go along, you will come across many ashramas, even today. And I think there was one ashram at the end of it, Vedaniketan. Yeah. You pass through Vedaniketan and then continue to walk. You will find something not so nice to smell, the sewage plant, and then further up as you go near the ghats of the Ganga, there is a road turning on to the left. If you turn to the left, on the right side, there are these abandoned concrete caves, artificial caves made of concrete, which were once upon a time air conditioned. These were the air conditioned caves made by Maharshi Mahesh Yogi of transcendental meditation fame, for the Beatles to come and live when they came to see him. The Beatles had become his disciples and they landed in a helicopter somewhere near Rishikesh, and they were given these air conditioned caves to live in. You pass the air condition, now there is no air condition, there is no caves, the forest department has taken away the whole place. You go further up and then turn to the right, keep walking and then turn left and keep walking, and about an hour and a half probably you will reach Nilkant. Now before reaching Nilkant, Nilkant is on the top, down you will find the cave of Mauni Baba. Now it has 3 layers of caves. One is the first cave, then inside that there is another, then if you bend and go inside there is a third one, and it is still there. Now also one can go and stay, not stay, you can go and see. So Mauni Baba was a great Naga sadhu who used to live there, and whenever Maheshwarnath Babaji, my guru, went there, this Naga Baba used to shift and go to Nilkant proper, the top of the mountain, and stay there in his kutia, allowing Babaji to stay here, and there would be a brahmachari who would be looking after our needs. So this time I was also there. So I met Mauni Baba, and he was also very surprised that Babaji had found a disciple, Shishya. And later on Maheshwarnath Babaji told me that Mauni Baba had met Sri Guru Babaji at Nilkant many years ago. So he knew who he was and what. Anyway, so we stayed at that cave, and during the day I was allowed to wander around whenever I wanted, come to the other side, walk around and go back when I wanted. Meditation times were fixed, I had to be there, and I learned living there with Babaji. Many discussions and knowledge was imparted to me on the Upanishads, the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavatam, Ramayana, other texts of the Nath Panth like the Goraksha Shataka, the Satchakra Nirupana, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Garanda Samhita, and so on, and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Apart from the great Buddhist text written by Nagarjuna called Prajna Paramita, all these I studied there living with Babaji in Mauni Baba's cave, and it was a wonderful period of time for me because I was understanding things which I couldn't even have dreamt of even existed. Then one day, I used to come out, wash my clothes in the river and go back. So one day while I was standing on this side, I saw a young lady, a young girl sitting there on the rock, who was definitely of foreign origin because her hair was not black, it was blonde and brown, and she was sitting there. She was wearing a tulsi mala in her neck, she was wearing a pale sari, and she was sitting there. Most of the time I found her every now and then vomiting near the rocks on the banks of the river. So I went to her and asked her if some food poisoning or what is wrong with you. She said, no, it's not food poisoning. So what is that? She said, I have been coming here to Rishikesh for many years. I am very fond of the river Ganga, and I am also very fond of the Himalayas in Rishikesh. I have been to Badri, Kedar and all that, but I have no interest in Hinduism or religion or meditation or anything of the kind. I just love the place, so I like to come. She said, I tried to go to one or two ashrams, but I am not interested. They tried to convert me. But I love the Himalayas. I love the Ganges, the Ganga. I like the Himalayan mountains. So I like. So I said, but why are you vomiting? She said, because this is probably the 4th time that I am coming here. But now the doctor in the US has diagnosed that I have cancer of the intestines, and he has given me 3 months. He says that you will not last beyond 3 months. So I decided that I should do what I love most before I die. So I have come here to enjoy what I love most, which is the river and Rishikesh. So I am here. And now she said, I have come to a stage where even if I drink water, it comes out. I cannot even drink water. I could make out when she explained, because she was very thin and very weak and pale. It struck me that perhaps Babaji might help, but I couldn't take somebody there directly and go to him without his permission. So I said, you just wait here, I will come back. I made a run from there. Normally it takes about 1.5 hours to reach Moni Baba's cave. I must have reached in about 30 minutes maybe. I ran fast and I reached there, and Babaji was sitting there, just there outside as if waiting for me. So I started. I said, Babaji, there is this lady there. So he said, which lady? So what? You now started looking at lady. I said, Babaji, there is a it's foreigner ladies, is it? I said, Babaji, aisa nahi hai. It's not like that. There is a sick lady there. So he said, are you a doctor or am I a doctor? I said, so why this interest on sick ladies? I said, Babaji, she is suffering, she has been vomiting. He looked at me for some time and he said, I said, I wanted you to see her. Don't do anything. I don't know what you want to do or you don't want to do, but I just want you to see her. Maybe before she dies. Doctor says she will last only for 3 months. Maybe your blessings before she dies would be of use to her. He thought for some time and he said, ठीक है, लेके आओ. All right, bring her. He said. So I again made a run, maybe the same time, excited because I have succeeded to take this girl there. So I said, come with me. She said, after some time I can't run with you, I can only walk. So slowly she walked, I went with her. Must have taken around 2.5 hours or so for us to reach. I thought now this is finished because Babaji would have gone somewhere or God knows what he is doing. He'll say, where were you? But he was again like before waiting there as if he was waiting for us. Took her and made her sit down. Babaji said, baitho, baitho. Then I said, Babaji, this girl, I don't want to use names. In my autobiography I have mentioned this story, but I have used a pseudonym, not the real name, Jenny. So he said she is very ill, she has cancer of the intestines, and the doctor in the US has said that she will not live for more than. So I wanted to tell him, actually I didn't tell him, I said, Babaji, I will. She started in English and I started translating in Hindi. So after 1 minute, Babaji said, chup raho. Oh, he kept quiet because I thought he didn't know English, and after even all these experiences, I thought somebody should translate for him. He said, chup raho. So I kept quiet. So he listened. Yeah, he kept shaking his head, closed his eyes. So she said that I had cancer. The doctors have said that I will be dead in 3 months, and there is nothing I can do about it. I don't know why I came. He called me, brought me here. But she addressed him as master. So after some time he looked at her and she said, so I will be dead in 3 months. So And then he talked back to her in English, and that too in the same accent in which she was talking, and I can't imitate that accent. And he said to her, "Oh, so you are going to die?" "Yes, master," she said. "Yes," he said, "I am also going to die. He is also going to die. Everybody is going to die at some point or the other." He was not laughing or smiling, but there was some peculiar expression, and he said it very softly. He said, "You are saying you are going to die. I am going to die. He is going to die. Everybody is going to die at some point." Then he said, "At least you think you know when you are going to die. Most people don't know when they are going to die. So relax. If you are going to die, it's better to die peacefully." And the moment he said this, I was watching this girl, and her face, facial expression completely changed. She looked, suddenly there was an expression of peace coming into her mind, as if she had accepted it completely. So he said, "So if you are going to go in peace, I am with you." And then he said, he taught her some simple breathing exercise to do and something to chant, which is Om. And he said, "So go home, do this exercise and chant Om and be peaceful and think of me. Okay?" She said, "Okay, master." And then he said, "Take her back and leave her where she came from." So I took her, and after 2 days, she had booked her ticket already to go back. So after 2 days, she went away. She went to Delhi, and from there I think she must have flown. I lost complete touch with her, because in those days I neither had a telephone number nor an address on which to write. It completely, but I had one, she said, "Where can I contact you?" I said, "Care of Shivananda Nagar Post Office. If you write, perhaps I will get the letter, and write Shiv Prasad, Brahmachari Shiv Prasad." She said, "All right." Because this name Madhukarnath, which Babaji had given me, was supposed to be then very confidential, only between him and me. So I gave her Shiv Prasad, which is the name I got in Haridwar. Fine. And she went away. I lost complete touch with her. 2-3 years passed. I think 3 or more. Meanwhile, I think Babaji, 85, Babaji went off after that. I went to Rishikesh. As usual, I used to go wander around Rishikesh for a month or 2 and come back, whatever I was doing, working, not working. So with my backpack I went, and I was walking near Muniki Jadi in Rishikesh. And then I thought somebody crossed and went on the other side. It looked so much like Jenny, but little well built. So could be a relative. I don't know anything about her. So I went, stood, and then she went and stood, and she called me, and Shiv Prasad, she said, "Are you?" I said, "Yes." "Are you Jenny?" She said, "Yes." I said, "What happened to you? I thought she was dead in 3 months. She said, "Can we go and sit and have a cup of tea or coffee somewhere? I'll explain to you." I said, "All right." So we went and sat in one of those little, there are many shops out there. And I said, "What happened to you?" She said that she went back. She went back home. She said, "I was so peaceful. I felt that I am perfectly all right. I am going to die, so let me die in peace." And then slowly, one day I drank water and I didn't vomit. So I drank coffee and I didn't vomit. Then I had food and I didn't vomit. So I went back to the doctor and said, "Please have a checkup." So he checked up and said, it has gone, there is no cancer. She said, but how is this possible? You gave me 3 months. He said, sometimes these things happen. Nobody can say. Certain diseases go off by themselves. There is some natural process. He said, he gave me a bag load of shit. This is exactly what she told me, but I was fine. And she was fine. So she said, I thought, let me go back to Rishikesh now and enjoy. And believe me, how did I see you? She said, this is all arranged. She said, where can we see the master? I said, go on. So she said, this is funny that I should see you. I said, yeah. So we spent some time together, and then she went back. And again, completely out of my system. But this time, I could give her some address where she could write a letter to me. So I gave her address in Chennai, where I was staying in my house. And then after some time, 1 year or so, 1.5 years, I got a letter, but it was not from her. It was from her, but the letter was from address was for her brother. I didn't know her brother, so I thought it's some American has written me a letter. So when I opened it, there was a letter inside that written by her. And the letter was very strange. The letter said that I am perfectly fine and clear now. I went to sleep yesterday night and I dreamt of the master. So he came in the dream and he asked me, are you okay now? I said, I am okay. You are cured? I said, I am cured. He said, you are perfectly all right, at peace? I said, I am perfectly all right, at peace. Then he said, it's time to go home now, and went away. So I don't understand the import of this. I am writing this letter, waking up at midnight, I am writing this letter to you. What does he mean by going home? All the best and all, signed and kept. And her brother had found his letter, because the next morning she never woke up. So her brother found his letter near her bed, in which the address was written. So he posted it to me, because in that my original name was written, because when I met her again in Rishikesh, I told her, I don't want to make a fool of you, this is my real name. It came to me. I read it. Her brother said, it's a covering note, I am sending this to you, because she had told me that you are a good friend of hers, and things like that. So this is the story of Babaji's and Jenny, which was a very moving experience for me also. Now, during this time when I was staying in the cave, Mauni Baba's cave, one day we had a discussion. Actually, we had come to Rishikesh on this side. We were walking down on the other side of the river. The discussion was, Babaji said, in the future at some point you will teach Kriya Yoga to people. I said, if you want to. I don't want to do anything of that kind, but if you want me to do it, I will do it. I said, yes. Then he said, you have to choose persons very carefully. I said, in what way? So he gave me 20 points, 20 points on what are the qualifications that I should look for to initiate somebody into Kriya Yoga. I looked at the list and I told him, if I go by this list, I cannot initiate anybody into Kriya Yoga. I cannot do it. You will have to find somebody else, because I cannot do, because most of the people we know, we see, they fall into these categories which you have written. So if you say they are not qualified to learn Kriya, then whom should we teach Kriya? I said, I cannot teach Kriya, because I can't look for somebody without these. He said, no, it is possible. So we kept arguing and talking about it. Oh, okay, he said, I'll cut 1 point. So still there are many. I said, none of these things are going to work. Few things, like if they are sincere, They would practice regularly. They will not harm others as much as possible. They will eat simple food, things like that, or they will be truthful. They won't steal from somebody. These things we can manage, but these things, they should not be married. How can you teach? Because most people are married, and there are many other lists. I can't describe the list to you, it's very big. He said no. He said, then okay, maybe I will find somebody else to teach Kriya Yoga. It's not possible. And we were discussing this matter, and we had come and turned near the corner of that air conditioned caves which I mentioned, where there is a lot of greenery there, forest. So, as soon as we reached there, I saw somebody coming, turning the corner and appearing before me. I looked at this person, and as soon as I saw him, he also saw him, and immediately he fell flat and did what is called Shashtanga Pranam. I have never seen Sri Guru Babaji Maheshwar Nathji bow down or do pranams to anybody. So when he did that flat, like throwing a tree down, I knew that Sri Guru Babaji. I also kind of thought it must be his Guru. It is our Paramaguru Sri. So I also prostrated. Now I am saying this because it is very important, because in this life, that was the first time that I saw Sri Guru Babaji himself for a few minutes. After that I saw him only twice this life, that too for a few minutes. So then we got up. Babaji, he smiled. I cannot tell you how wonderful a person can look. It cannot be a human being like that. He smiled, and then he put his hand on my shoulders like an old friend, and I was quite thrilled. And then he says to Maheshwar Nath Babaji, why don't you listen to what this boy says? Simplify it. How can you have such conditions? Nobody will learn Kriya then. So Babaji smiled and said, as you say, whatever you say. And he looked at me. I looked at him with that grin on my face as if I have won. And then he just walked past us and went and turned the corner. Now I had this irresistible desire to run after him and hold his feet or something. But Maheshwar Nath Babaji held my hand and he said, don't go, you won't find him anyway, so don't go, ruko. So I stood still. After 5 minutes or so, I really got this temptation to go and peep. I looked, there was nobody there. So that was my first meeting in this life with Sri Guru Babaji for maybe 5 minutes or maximum 10 minutes. After that, I met him only twice. One, when Maheshwar Nath Babaji passed away near Mauni Baba's cave, when he attained Samadhi. And the next time, many years later, when I went to Kailash with a group of people, I had this, I can't say it is a physical thing, it was more like a vision of Sri Guru Babaji. So this is what it is. And now, having said all this, that does not mean that Sri Guru Babaji is someone who is inaccessible. If someone is sincere and would very much long or crave to see him, I personally believe that it is possible that he would bestow his grace by coming into such a person's presence. But sincerity is of utmost importance. One has to be sincere, one has to ask for it, and one has to lead a life which does not create harm to other living beings, especially human beings who are among the most evolved of living beings on this earth. Regarding Kriya Yoga, when Kriya Yoga is given, since we are on that subject, it is not as if Kriya Yoga is practiced to have a vision of Sri Guru Babaji. This is a completely wrong concept. Kriya Yoga is practiced so that one may purify one's mind, purify one's system, body and mind, make your consciousness subtler and subtler, lift it from the gross to the subtle level, and maybe after many lives, or maybe in this life, depending upon various factors, reach perfection, which in yogic terms is called Kaivalya. Kriya Yoga is not practiced to have a vision of Sri Guru Babaji. See whether you have a vision or see Sri Guru Babaji depends on other factors. It does not depend on this. When you take Kriya, it is your bounden duty to practice it regularly, follow instructions from the teacher who has given you, and evolve in your spiritual journey till you touch that center in our inner heart, which is connected in some way to the higher intelligence, which is called God. This is the purpose of Kriya, and it is not a complicated process. It is not a process also which is done in the smashan or somewhere in a hidden place. It is simply done in private, because those who have not learned Kriya do not practice it and commit mistakes. So, some little bit of privacy is essential for the practice of yoga, of Kriya Yoga. It consists of simple exercises to raise our consciousness from the lower level to higher and subtler levels, so that life becomes multidimensional and one is able to access dimensions which are normally not possible for the rational mind, ordinary mind, or the brain to contact or understand or realize. This is the essence and meaning of. Last episode I talked about living in the Mauni Baba's cave in Rishikesh on the other side of the Ganga, on the way to Nilkant Parvat with Sri Babaji. So many things happened. I learnt a lot staying there. I was taught so many scriptures and so on, but there are one or two moving incidents which happened, which I would like to talk about now. One is that one day we set out from Rishikesh along the banks of the Ganga on the small little path that runs on the side towards the Vashishta Gufa. I have mentioned before about Vashishta Gufa and also about the Arundhati cave. So Babaji said, let's go and spend 2 days at the Arundhati cave. So we walked along the path on the Ganga and arrived quite late in the evening, because we started a little late from Mauni Baba's cave. By the time we had reached there, for some reason, also because we had walked for complete stretch without stopping anywhere, my body was aching, especially my legs below the knees were really paining, and I was wondering what to do, because normally as soon as you reach a place, I am supposed to set up the dhoni, I am supposed to clean up the place. This is part of my training or duties. So I was just thinking now, anyway, Babaji has asked me to do something and I will do it. So in spite of being tired and with pain in my knees and legs, I cleaned up everything. went and cut some dead branches of some trees, dried up, lit the dhuni and everything, and then I sat down to meditate. What happens is, after some time, the dhuni, fire, becomes less strong. I mean, the flames go off and there are only the cinders burning. So you can only see a glow and the rest of the place is dark. So after lighting the dhuni, I sat down and meditated. Food, we had carried some soaked chanas in the kamandalu, so we ate the chanas. They are a very good source of protein and carbohydrates, and you immediately get a lot of energy. You have to overnight soak chana and eat it in the morning and drink the water. So after that, I sat down, and after about an hour or so, I sat and meditated. Babaji, as usual, was sitting in front of the fire. After meditation, this usually happens to most people. You sit and meditate, and when you feel peaceful and relaxed, then the body says, why don't we relax a little more? So we usually lie down. We say, it's paining here, let me lie down and meditate so that I will be free of the distractions and disturbances. So I also did the same thing. I said, now it's very nice, so let me stretch my legs and meditate. So I stretched my legs, lay down, meditated, and as usual, fell asleep. It always happens when you are meditating sitting down, and when you decide to meditate lying down, after a while from meditation you shift to sleep. So I also fell asleep. Now, late in the night, I think I must have slept around 2-3 hours. I woke up with the fear that something was trying to pull my legs, tug my legs. Now in that area, as I told you before, in those days leopards used to wander around. So I immediately got the suspicion either a bear or a leopard was trying to pull my legs, but I opened my eyes and Babaji was sitting very close to me. I tried to get up and I found that my right leg was on his lap. So and Babaji said, let jao. So when I looked, I found that it was not a wild animal trying to pull me away. My right leg was on Babaji's lap, and he was massaging the foot at the calf muscles with his hands. I think he was an expert masseur. It was so wonderful. He was massaging the feet, and he said, so I was terrified, I was horrified. I said, how is this possible? I am supposed to massage his feet and he is massaging my feet. So I said, Babaji, what are you doing? He said, chup, so jao, aram karo. So I had no option other than to lie down. And maybe he did something because he touched me on the head and I fell asleep. Morning I woke up and said to Babaji, you should not have done this. The Guru is not supposed to massage the disciple's feet. The disciple is supposed to massage the Guru's feet. He said, in our connection there is no such thing. I try to assuage the pain of all human beings, living beings. It doesn't matter they are Guru or disciple or teacher or conductor or anything. It's all the same to me. This was a very touching experience for me, because why would someone want to go out of the way and help someone who is his own disciple? Normally it is the other way around. That taught me a great lesson, that out of humility and affection, you can really affect somebody's heart rather than force. And this was not an attempt to win me over, because he had already won me over. The very fact that someone is capable of doing such a thing shows his spiritual refinement and his spiritual advancement on the path. That is one experience. The other was, one day we were sitting in Mauni Baba's cave as usual. I was looking at Babaji. He was talking. And then suddenly he asked me, in the relationship between you and me, what do you think about yourself? I said, I think of myself as a dog sitting before his master and looking. He said, only don't shake your tail too much. So I said, all right, I won't. And then he laughed, I laughed, and it went off. So one day we were sitting like that. Suddenly he said to me, it looks to me as if you are getting too attached to my physical appearance and my body. It's not a good thing, because what I am trying to do is to train you to be free. Now, to be free also means to be independent and not dependent upon somebody. So, I am trying to teach you to stand on your own feet. So, a dependence upon me, which is caused due to your attachment towards my physical figure and frame, in a way is an obstacle to your freedom. You are getting conditioned, tied up, rather than becoming free. So, I said, so he said, you must leave me and go away somewhere for some period and figure out for yourself how you can live without me. Now, all this he explained, but all I heard was, now you can pack your things and go. Naturally, I was very upset. First I was angry, then I was upset, because I had broken all ties with my family at home, and I had come out of everything, had burned my bridges, there was no going back, or so I thought. And here he says, now you go away. It's almost like saying, get out. So I was very upset in a way. Then first I thought I will plead with him. And when you are young, you see, you have a certain rebellious streak to your character. So I said, no, I am not going to reason with him or plead with him. He says, go, so I'll go. I know how to survive. So I took my cloth bag and my blanket, my kamandalu, tied the other blanket across, did pranams, prostrated before Babaji, and without looking at him, started walking. I didn't turn back to see what he was doing or whether he was looking at me. I was in what you might call, I was in a huff. So I walked out, and I thought I will go to Uttarkashi or Gomukh or Gangotri or somewhere. So I went along the Tehri road. There's one road from Munikireti which goes through Tehri towards Uttarkashi and Gangotri, Gomukh, and the other road goes to Badrinath. So I took the road towards Gomukh, towards Gangotri. Idea was, I thought maybe I'd go and stay sometime in Uttarkashi, which I had never visited before. So I started out. I must have walked for about an hour or so. It was very beautiful, because as you approach the Chandrabhaga river, which is now shut off and diverted by the Tehri Dam, you see only pebbles there. It used to be a beautiful river, Chandrabhaga river. On the banks of the river you could see peacocks dancing. And of that day I also saw an albino, white peacock dancing, and it was so fascinating. You know that among the many animals and birds, it's the male bird that dances. The peahen doesn't dance, it just keeps his tail down and walks around. But the peacock is the one that spreads his tail and dances. So I've seen many peacocks there. So I was watching that and enjoying myself and walking along. In between I heard somebody saying, oh Maharaj, ruko. So I turned It was one of the sadhus who was also going to Uttarkashi. So I folded my hands and told him, look, I don't want to network with you, I don't want to talk to you. Silent, you go, I go. He went off, because otherwise what happens is, sometimes you come across a fellow traveler, then he starts talking to you, and then the whole thing, I know where to eat, then you get caught up again in this. Better to be alone in such circumstances. I remember meeting a sadhu who said he was an ex-judge and he'd become a sannyasin, and he said, go to Gupta Kashi, this, that and all. I knew from the first time he began that it was all a pack of lies. So finally I had to say, please go your way, I'll go my way. So this time also I said, I am going my way, you go your way, and escaped. So he went off. So I was alone again. It's very beautiful actually to be alone and free, walking near the banks of a river or near the mountains. Anyway, so then suddenly it started raining. Now when it starts to rain, now that I don't have an umbrella, I have no place to hide. So I said to myself, this is how a wandering yogi lives. When it rains, you get soaked with the water. When the sunshine comes, then it will dry. So don't bother about it. And it was lightly raining, so I walked in the rain without attempting to hide in any place. I went for a distance again, maybe another half an hour or so. And then the sun came out. And then the clothes, my body became dry because of the sunlight. In the Himalayas, when the sun comes out, if you are exposed to the sun, it's usually quite hot during the day, except in the upper heights. So I became dry. I said, this is how a yogi lives. When it rains, you're wet. When the sun comes, you're dry, and so on. And walked along. Then I started chanting the Gita to myself. After a while, I came through a small path, the banks of the Ganga. I thought I heard somebody walking behind me. First thought was, must be one more sadhu who's coming. Now how to avoid, how to escape? Then the steps came nearer and nearer. And then they stopped near. I also stopped. In my mind I had a suspicion, maybe Babaji is coming to call me back. I said, no, this is not possible. So I put it away. And then I heard that unmistakable voice calling very tenderly and sweetly, Madhu. Now when Babaji said that word, it sounded completely different from simply saying Madhu. That was the name he had given me when he initiated me into the Nath Panth, Madhukar Nath, and he was fond of calling me Madhu. So it was definitely Babaji. Then he moved closer and he put his hand on my shoulder. I had half a mind not to turn, but it was irresistible to turn, so I turned. Babaji asked me, "To kahan ja rahe ho? Where are you going?" I said, "Somewhere I am going. You told me to go, so I am going. What does it matter where I am going? I am going." "Oh," he said, "so you are going because I asked you to go." I said, "Yeah, I am going because you asked me to go." "So which means if I ask you to come back, you will come back?" You know, I had a tough fight in my mind. I wanted to actually say, "No, I won't come back. Why should I come back?" But finally I said, "Yes, I will come back." So he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Let's go back to Moni Baba's cave." So we walked back. That was my first experience when Babaji said, "Get out." And so while we were walking, Babaji asked me, "How did you feel when you were away from me?" I said, "In the beginning I was feeling a little sad, but afterwards I was beginning to enjoy the freedom of walking without anybody, all alone." He said, "This is exactly what I wanted you to learn, and in future times may come when you will have to live alone, go away somewhere. It's not always possible for you to be with me." I said, "Understood." So now what? said, now we are going back to Moni Baba's cave because I need to teach you certain things. So we went back to Moni Baba's cave. It took us 2 hours to reach there, 2-3 hours. We reached Moni Baba's cave, and that evening and the next evening, for the next 3 evenings, I had wonderful lessons on the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which is a textbook on the practice of yoga, which was written by Swa Atma Rama, who was a Nathpanthi, who came from the Nathpanth, which is also my parampara. Now, I had already explained to you that the Nathpanth considers Shiva himself as Adinath, the beginner, the founder of the system. From that, Matsyendranath, then Gorakhnath, and then several other Naths. Now, also, if it was not for the Nathpanthis, much of the yogic knowledge would have been lost. They were the ones who saved yoga, revived it, wrote so many textbooks on the practice of yoga, because otherwise, when the bhakti movement was on, it would have been rubbed off. Because in the bhakti movement, people believe that if you call God with all your heart and love God, that is enough, you don't have to practice. That's one way of life, but that doesn't mean that it is suited for everybody. The other is the pure Vedantin who believes that everything is an illusion, Maya, Brahma Satyam and Jagat Mithya, and that there is only Brahman that exists and you are part of that Brahman and so on. Now this theoretically may appear to be wonderful, but in practice it's really difficult to practice. You can't say the world is Maya and go and stand before a running train. You know Maya, it's a real thing coming. It means something else. Maya, it has been misinterpreted for many years. The world is an illusion and there is only one truth, the Brahman. Actually, the meaning is, Maya means things are not what you think they are. It's not as if they don't exist. They exist. But they exist, maybe they exist very different from what you think they are. So when you think they are what you think they are, then it is an illusion. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. The world exists, but not the way we think it exists. This is the meaning of the theory of Maya, not that nothing exists. If nothing exists, you don't have to eat, drink, you don't have to sleep, you nothing. This is impossible. So theoretically, yes, Vedanta explains this, but it has been misinterpreted at some point. Now, it also means the mistaken concept of saying something is not permanent, but something being not permanent does not mean that it does not exist. It doesn't mean that the world is an illusion, it means that the world is impermanent. So it is there for some time, and after some time it does not exist, which is true of us also. We are here today. All this I learned that day in the next 3 days in the Babaji's cave while we were discussing the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. When we also know that we don't exist for all time, although we like to. I think people think that they will live forever. Nobody lives forever, everybody goes. All the great people who have come, talked about immortality have also gone. Nobody is going to remain. It's temporary, it's not permanent. So the discrimination in Vedanta is between what is permanent and what is impermanent. And most of all the world that we see is impermanent, including ourselves. The question next is there something that is permanent? Vedanta says the essence of this world, essence of our consciousness is the only permanent thing. Everything else is impermanent. That is the meaning. It's not that it does not exist. When you are alive now and in the waking state, it definitely exists. You can't say it does not exist. Okay. Now, other thing is, in the discussion on Hatha Yoga, Babaji explained to me what it means, because some people have a wrong notion. They think Hatha Yoga is physical exercise. Hatha Yoga is to do with yoga for the body only. It's not true. The word Hatha Yoga comes from two syllables, Ha and Tha. Ha and Tha, which means, according to yogic anatomy and physiology, in the human system, there are three main nadis. This is the essence of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. One is the left nadi, which is called the Ida nadi, and the right, which is called the Pingala nadi, and the central one, which is called the Sushumna nadi. Now, anatomically, if you look at it medically, the left nadi is the left ganglionic chain, right nadi is the right ganglion, and the Sushumna nadi is the central channel, which is the spinal cord, starting from the bottom of the spine and reaching the cerebrum through the cerebellum. These are the three nadis. Now, the nadi which is on the right, called Pingala, is referred to as Ha, and the nadi that is in the left, which is the Ida nadi, is called Tha. So, the Ida nadi is supposed to be cool. Tha represents the moon, and Ha, which is the Pingala nadi on the right, is considered to be hot, which means represented by the sun. Now, this hot and cold, combining this heat and the cold, which means bringing the Ida nadi, the prana, the energy that is going through the Ida and Pingala to the Muladhara, neutralizing it and making it go through the Sushumna nadi to this Sahasrara chakra, which is in the top of the head, is the process of Hatha Yoga. It's not as if it is physical exercise. Now, asanas are important in Hatha Yoga because they keep the body healthy, and without keeping the body healthy, you cannot keep the mind healthy. Can you imagine meditating with pains here and there and with ill health? It's not possible. At least in the beginning stages, it's not possible. So, Hatha Yoga through asanas and postures aims to keep the body fit, strong and healthy. One. Second, it also applies soothing massage or soothing vibrations to the spinal cord. You will see that in any asana, either you bend this way or you bend this way. And some asanas you stand upside down. Why? Because very often we suffer from less circulation of blood in the brain region, because most of the time we are walking. Even if we lie down, it's only horizontal. But if you can some way reverse, then a lot of blood flow comes into the brain. Of course, if you have high BP and so on, it's not be done, but generally for a healthy individual. Which is also the reason why we are asked to bow our heads down when you go to temples or when you see a holy person. Say, bend your head down, because when you bend your head down, one is you are showing that, well, I have surrendered. The other is actually is good for us because it increases the circulation of blood. So, even if there is no holy man or temple, you can shut the door in your empty room and few times go up and down. It's a good thing. It makes the blood circulate in the brain. And in meditation, you are not putting the mind into some kind of a lethargic sleep. In meditation, the mind is calm and quiet, but it is very alert. It's not as if it has gone to sleep. Then it is sleep, it is not meditation. So, these are some of the things in Hatha Yoga. So, when Swatma Rama wrote the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, he devised the asanas and the pranayam, the breathing techniques which are required to make the prana neutralize between the Ida and the Pingala and go through the Sushumna nadi. So, I learnt all this that day at the cave of Mauni Baba. He also taught me the Sat Chakra Nirupana, which is another textbook on the practice of yoga, and the Goraksha Shataka, which has 100 verses on the practice of yoga purported to be authored by Gorakhnath, the great yogi who belonged to the Nath Parampara. So, after a few days more of living in Mauni Baba's cave, Babaji decided that we will go towards Uttarkashi, spend some time in Uttarkashi, and go to Gangotri, where the Ganga actually descends into the plains, and from there go on to Gomukh, and beyond that to Tapovan. It's a complete glacier called the Tapovan Gangotri Glacier. So plans were made. With Babaji, plans were made means one day he would get up and say, tomorrow morning we are going. This is how plans are made. I was very happy because I was always looking forward to going to the source of the Ganga, which is called Gomukha. Now, it's very interesting, and we must understand the importance of Gomukh. In the Bhagavata Purana, there is a beautiful story. Now, you must know that the Ganga which descends from Gomukh is also called Bhagirathi. It's the Bhagirathi which comes down from there and joins with Alaknanda and then becomes the Ganga. So the Bhagirathi owes his name to Bhagirath, who was a grandson of the great emperor Sagara, who is referred to in the Bhagavatam. The story is that the great emperor Sagara conducted Ashwamedha, where a horse is let loose to wander around, and whoever can get hold of that horse is appointed the ruler of the country. Usually what happens is the ruler who lets go of the horse himself catches it, or someone from their family brings it back. Now Sagara was already a very powerful emperor in Puranic times. He is supposed to have had 1,000 sons. Can you imagine 1,000 sons? This is not possible in this yuga. Kali Yuga is difficult to look after one son. Anyway, so this is what the Bhagavat says. So Indra is always the god Indra, who is the god of the sense organs, or king of all the gods, Devas, is always afraid that if a human being on earth becomes powerful, he might occupy heaven and take over from him. So fearing that the horse may go back to their kingdom, Indra is supposed to have stolen the horse and hidden it somewhere. So Indra thought, even if I hide it in Devaloka, they will catch me. So where can I hide in a safe place where the horse is not discovered? So the story goes that below the earth or under the sea, there is a loka where the great Muni Kapila, who is the founder of the Sankhya philosophy, and about whom Krishna says in the Gita, that among the Munis I am Kapila. That great Rishi is supposed to be doing tapasya in the nether world under the sea. So Indra decided it's better to take the horse to the nether world and tie it somewhere there so that nobody will find it. And he also thought, if I tie it near Kapila Muni, people would think maybe Kapila stole it. So there is no problem for me, I can escape. And Kapila is supposed to be in deep meditation there in the nether world. So when King Sagara came to know that his horse was stolen in the Ashwamedha, he didn't know that Indra has done this. He sent his 1,000 sons to go and find out where it was. So the Bhagavat Purana says that when the 1,000 sons with their mighty warriors came and looked everywhere and went down to the nether world, they found that the horse was tied near Kapila Muni, who was in deep meditation. Now, they thought, as Indra thought would happen, that Kapila has stolen the horse. So they made a big commotion, and Kapila from meditation opened his eyes, and they accused him of stealing the horse. Kapila, being upset by this charge that he had stolen the horse, in a little bit of anger, not even much, looked at the 1,000 sons of Sagara. The Bhagavad says that they were all reduced to ashes. Now, when this was reported to Sagara, he sent different people to find out where the ashes of his 1,000 sons. Nobody could succeed. Finally, his grandson Bhagirath went looking for ashes, went to the nether world and found Kapila Muni meditating deeply. So he prostrated before him and with due respect asked him if he knew anything about this. And Kapila Muni said, yes, this is what happened. Your grandfathers, 1,000 grandfathers have all been reduced to ashes because of this. It was an inadvertent move on my part. I was a little upset, so I looked at them and they turned to ashes. This is what a great yogi is capable of. So Bhagirath said, that is all right, sir, but how do we bring it back? How do we get them back? And Kapila Muni said, there is only one possibility. In the heavens, which means in the upper regions beyond the earth, flows a river called Ganga. You have to invite Ganga to come down to the earth. The moment the waters of the Ganga touch the ashes, all your 1,000 grandfathers will come back to life. So Bhagirath said, how do I do that? So Kapila Muni said, do intense tapasya and request Ganga to flow down from high up. So Bhagirath is supposed to have done intense tapasya near Tapovan. That's why it's called Tapovan. And then Ganga, in the form of a beautiful woman, appeared before him and said, okay, I accept your tapasya. You have done ghor tapasya for so long. I am willing to come, but there are some problems. So you have to solve it for me. Bhagirath said, what? So Ganga said, one is that I am so strong that your earth will not be able to withstand my pressure. So when I hit the earth, probably I will punch a hole through the earth and come out on the other side. How do you handle this problem? The other is that there are so many sinners on earth that if I come, they will all have a bath. And when they have a bath, all my waters will get polluted. So there are two problems. If you solve them, I am willing to come. So as it happens in many of these Puranas and Itihasas, Bhagirath went to Shiva in Kailash and said, these are the two problems that I am facing, can you help me? Shiva said to him in the Bhagavad, that second problem is easily sorted out. Please tell Ganga, not only are there sinners on this earth, there are also great sages in the Himalayas. And if one sage washes his body in the waters of the Ganga, the pollution of hundreds and thousands of sinners washing their bodies will be annihilated. It will get pure. And for the first, there is only one solution. Nobody else can do this. I am the only one who can withstand. I am the only one who prevented the poison which came out during Samudra Manthan from spreading into the world and killing everybody. So I can help you with this. I can receive the Ganga as it comes from heavens on my matted locks and then control and allow her to trickle down gently so that she doesn't poke a hole through the Bhuloka. So it was agreed. When this was put to the Ganga, she agreed. So Bhagirath came in front and Ganga followed, and therefore she was called Bhagirathi, because she came with the tapasya of Bhagirath. Now the place where Ganga emerges from the glaciers is known as Gomukh, because it is shaped like the mouth of a cow, Gomukha. You can actually go and see it. It's a huge glacier which goes into Zampovan. From inside the glacier there is an arch, and from there it comes out. And it looks like North Pole as you see in the pictures, because everywhere there is ice, you see icebergs floating along with the water. And it truly seems to be endless. It keeps coming. It has been coming for thousands of years. Anyway, so our intention was to go to Uttarkashi first, spend a few days, and then go beyond to Gangotri, where the Ganga descends into the plains, and then beyond to Gomukh and Tapovan. So the first halt was Uttarkashi. So after many days, Babaji on the way showed me many things. We talked various things, discussed. We can't go completely into this. We reached Uttarkashi. Those days, Uttarkashi was a very, very beautiful place. Now also it is beautiful, but it has now, because of the pilgrims and the roads having improved and hundreds of vehicles during the pilgrim season, it's become a little busy and a little dirty with plastic and this and that. Those days it was pristine and pure and clear, and most of the people who lived there were sadhus. It was a colony of sadhus living here and there in small kutis. Now it's called Uttarkashi because the main temple around which this Uttarkashi is built is a temple of Shiva. It's a small linga, but an ancient linga worshipped by great rishis for hundreds and thousands of years. And it's a central part of Uttarkashi. And because it is a ancient Shiva temple, Kashi Vishwanath is the name given to Shiva. So it is a Kashi Vishwanath temple, and it is also called Uttarkashi because it flows from, in Banaras the river flows this way. In the rivers, normally you see rivers flowing from north to south. Here it flows some distance from south to north. In the same way in Uttarkashi, the Ganga flows, the Bhagirathi flows in a reverse direction, just like Banaras. So it's called Uttarakashi. That means northern Kashi. And it's a beautiful temple where you can go and sit and meditate quietly, especially if you are there during the non-pilgrim season, although it gets cold. It is very close to Gangotri. And there is nothing, no attractions there except the sadhus and the ashramas, where you can go from one ashram to another. There are any number of annakshetras. So if you are a sadhu and register yourself there, you can get 2 times free food in any one of these ashramas. So Babaji took me there, and we lived in 2 kutirs. And he instructed me to be there for till April. He was going away to Gomukh. He said he will come back and then we will travel together. So till then I was supposed to remain in Uttarkashi. Longest period I was remaining without seeing Babaji, 6 months. So I was left to fend for myself, to go and collect food from the Annakshetra, come back. If it is not too good, heat it a bit and put salt and eat it. And I had wonderful opportunities to meditate, go from place to place. I met lovely sadhus. One day, while I was sitting outside the courtyard, inside the courtyard of the Kashi Vishwanath temple and meditating with closed eyes, I was suddenly awakened by, I felt that somebody was looking at me. So when I opened my eyes, I saw a man who looked completely mad. His eyes were red and bulging out. And in that cold, he was bare bodied. He was just wearing a small cloth and his hair was all dirty and ruffled. And his mouth was open with his tongue out, and I was really scared. I thought he was completely mad man. Then he poked me with his finger. And then he said, Siddho, Siddho. And he also said, Bhalo, Bhalo. Hoye gyalo, hoye gyalo. So this was a language which at that time I couldn't understand much. And then he screamed loudly, shrill voice, and ran away. So I was stunned. I didn't know what was happening. Now there was a senior monk of the Ramakrishna mission, a Bengali monk also. He was also Bengali. He was sitting next to me regularly and meditating. So I approached him because he was witness to this. So the next day I approached him and I asked him, Swamiji Maharaj, what was this man saying? I think he is completely mad. He said, no, I don't think he is totally mad. He said, Thakur has said, Thakur in the Ramakrishna mission and in Bengal, when they say Thakur, normally they refer in the Ramakrishna mission circles, especially to Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So he says that Thakur has said that there are sometimes rarely greatly realized souls, highly spiritual, who are called Paramahamsas, who look like madmen. You think that they are mad, but they are really not mad. They put up also they are in such deep ecstasy that they are as if they are drunk most of the time. Drunk not with liquor, but with ecstasy. Ananda that comes from the soul. So these are, he said, I think he was a Paramahamsa. I said, but what was he saying? He said, yeah, I heard very clearly. He was saying, Siddho, Siddho, Bhalo, Bhalo, Hoye gyalo. What he said that Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa also used to refer to some people like this. He would also poke some spiritual practitioners and say Siddho, because in Siddha means a perfected being, but in Bengali Siddho means boiled. So when you want to boil a potato, you said make it Siddho, that means boil the potato. That means it is ready, the vegetable is boiled and ready. And in Bengali, Bhalo, Bhalo means very good, well boiled, ready. And Hoye gyalo means it is done, it is done. So the Swamiji told me that you are blessed. I think he says that you are ready and you have already been. So I told him, from my side, I don't think I have done anything to merit that description, but Babaji's blessing is there, so perhaps it is so. Anyway, that was one of the experience in Uttarkashi. I used to wander all around, go to these different sadhus. There is also the Tapovan Kutir there, where Tapovan Maharaj, who was the guru of Swami Chinmayananda, used to live. In fact, the Chinmaya mission today is built just behind the kutir. It includes the kutir also. And from that kutir there is a view of the Ganga. There used to be. Recently I found that the view has gone because some ashrams have come up on the side. I used to go and sit quietly. Tapovan Maharaj was not there. Once or twice I ran across Swami Chinmayananda when he came there, because he used to travel and come and spend some time. So I used to go and see all these sadhus living there. There were Dandi Swamis. Dandi Swamis are Swamis, sannyasins who were initiated by the Shankara Mats. So they are in the Shankara Mat. If you have to take sannyas, you have to be a Brahmin. So these are, when you see a Dandi Swami with a stick with something tied on it, that means they are Brahmana sannyasins. They are initiated from the Shankara Mathas. So I saw many of them there. They greet you saying Narayana. always Om Namo Narayana. Some of them were very learned, some of them were very old, and they were living under these difficult circumstances and being very happy. You could see the happiness on their faces when they went to get food from the Annakshetras. So I enjoyed this whole thing. Additionally, Babaji had instructed me to learn Sanskrit. So he had introduced me to one Krishnananda Sharma, who was a great Pandit, Sanskrit Pandit, living in Uttarkashi. Many people used to come to him. So the first day I went to him, and he asked me, "What is your name?" I said, "Madhukarnath." Babaji told me that you are coming. Okay. So you want to learn? I said, yes. So he said, first you have to learn chanting. If you don't learn chanting, then you cannot go forward. We usually don't start with grammar, we start with the chanting of the Upanishads and the Vedas. So I said, all right, I am ready to learn anything. Okay, have you been to a Pathshala before? I said, no, I have not been to any Pathshala. Then he said, okay, we should start with the Taittiriya part first. Chant the Taittiriya Patha and then we will proceed. I said, all right. I had never learned Sanskrit before, so I had a problem wondering how I was going to chant. But you must remember that the Malayalam language in Kerala, from where I come, has about 40% Sanskrit words. So I had by then read the Gita because of Babaji and so on. So started on the Taittiriya. So he started the Shanti part. Said, Channo Mitra Sham Varuna Channo Bhavatvariyama. So when he said, I repeated behind him. After 2-3 verses, he stopped and he said, are you lying to me or have you been to a Pathshala before? I said, no Panditji, I have not been to any Pathshala. Said, maybe Babaji's blessings. Then he said, what kind of people Babaji sends to me, I am surprised. कई टाइप के लोगों को भेज देते हैं, ठीक है, stay. So I learned Sanskrit with him for only 6 months when I was in Uttarkashi. That's the only grounding. But according to Sharmaji, Panditji, I was advancing very fast. So he attributed it to a past life. He said, otherwise it is impossible. So I said, whatever it is, but I am a sincere student, I am ready to study. So I studied. And the other significant thing was that I learned how to chant the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita by heart. How this is possible that in such a short while you can learn? I learned it in 3 weeks because in the Himalayan ashramas, especially in Uttarkashi, Rishikesh and other places, when you sit to eat food, all the Swamis and Brahmacharis before eating have to chant the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is called Purushottama Yoga. Only after chanting you are allowed to eat. So the incentive was very strong. I was worried that if I don't chant, I may not be allowed to eat. Especially for Brahmacharis and Sannyasins living in Uttarkashi, who get food by going to the Annakshetras. Occasionally someone comes and has a bhandar. Bhandar means a feast. And all these Brahmacharis and Swamis are all invited to come and have. Now when you go there, everybody is chanting the 15th chapter by heart and you left out, if you don't know. So for a few days I pretended to chant, I moved my lips. Then I decided it is better to learn by heart. So within 3 weeks I was chanting the 15th chapter beautifully. It's a wonderful chapter. Probably it is used before eating because it refers to the digestive acids and the movement of the digestive system and so on. But basically it's Purushottama Yoga means 15th chapter, Panchadashodhyaya means the Purushottama Yoga means the teaching on that Supreme Being who is beyond everything, in which Krishna explains how even though you see him as Krishna, he is in essence beyond all the world and yet being part of the whole world. This is Purushottama Yoga, and it starts with a very beautiful statement. It talks about an upside down people tree, because it starts with Urdhvamulam Mathashakam Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Paranani Yastam Vedasa Vedavit. That means Krishna says in the 15th chapter, there is an upside down people tree whose roots are up above and whose branches are down below, and whose leaves are the Vedas, and he who understands this understands the whole truth. Now, upside down people, normally all trees are with the roots down and the branches up. Here is a tree with its roots above and the branches down below. This is an imagery which is created to show that the world that we see and the human beings that we see and the living things that we see are all rooted on the higher truth which is beyond. It's not a direction up and down physical, it means that which is beyond. The essence is there, and from there these whole branches have come up. And if you cannot directly understand the essence, you have to understand the branches and the leaves before you begin to realize that the essence is, the root actually is higher up, it's spiritual and not physical. This is the meaning of Urdhvamulam Mathashakam. Apart from the fact that it represents the yogic anatomy, where the brain is the Sahasrara Chakra, which is the root, and this entire system of the body are the branches and the leaves controlled from this center, which is known to science anyway. So in meditation, we go to this center slowly and come to the essence of consciousness.